Hi, everyone. John here, and welcome to another edition of Let's Talk About Podcast. And today, I'm really excited to be joined by Zach Novak. How you doing, Zach?
Good. Thanks for having me, John.
Awesome. Thanks for making time. So, Zach, I think the first place to start is just to have a quick introduction about you, your background, just to help the audience understand what you do and where you've come from.
Yeah. So I'll give you kind of like the historical reference very quickly. In university, did a degree in engineering and business. I'm located in Calgary. I did school out east, but I thought that would make me the most employable person. And there was a big push in my school to get into these like hot careers, investment banking, management consulting. So I kind of just like followed that as like, what is the most successful career path? And I worked in a few different investment banks advising large corporations, typically on mergers and acquisitions and capital raising around oil and gas, as well as like energy infrastructure and power utilities for many years. And then I switched over into corporate, was at like a mid-size energy services company that was it was a private company acquiring a public company. So I was helping out with the negotiation of that and making the company go public. But through that process, I started working less in my investment banking days and just started thinking more about what I wanted to do for a career and what fulfills me and gives me meaning in my work, and decided to kind of go in a different direction, particularly something that was a little bit more entrepreneurial and towards technology.
Yeah, love it.
When I was at that organization, I joined a corporation because I was like, I want to learn how to build a business. And then I was like, I don't want to learn how to build this business.
Right. It's too much hard work.
I was like, I don't know. I just felt like it wasn't really pushing the world in the difference that in a way that I wanted to push it in.
It's interesting because building a business is unbelievably hard work, but it's interesting perspective because, like you, coming out of university, went into financial services, just wanting to earn the money because being an eldest child, wanted to buy a house, buy a car, just earn the cash. But then you realize that, you have that epiphany sort of, around your 30s or wherever. And you realize that building a business is hard, but you're in control. It's so much more enjoyable in the scheme of things.
Yeah, well, we can talk about a little bit more at the end of the journey, because what I did this like coding boot camp, learned how to code, thought that was the way into tech, and just got really interested in this certain topic of like why do people go to work and not like work and not enjoy work? And
wow, unpack that one.
And that's kind of been what I'm working on ever since. So I joined an organizational behavior change startup. We built technology to help bring change at scale within organizations. I worked in products, so really close with the developers and design team to bring that product to life. And then more recently, I've like pivoted into more community roles. I helped build, I would say what we're building is like a global leadership community for kind of young and emerging leaders, as well as building my own community that helps people pivot into tech. And then I most recently, I've left full-time employment and working on a few different projects. So one is to continue to develop that community. I'm working on a new brand, which isn't quite ready yet, but essentially it's a very like things we were talking about, helping organizations help their clients self-actualize through community. And lastly, I have a couple courses on the go. So that it's really my first foray into entrepreneurship, is only in the last few months, but I've worked in big size businesses or small businesses, helping those organizations grow essentially.
Yeah. So lots to unpack there. So hang on. You said how you got into coding boot camp, but then you talked about how you wanted to understand how people could enjoy their work more. And then you got into that organizational design and now more purpose and helping people learn skills. Is that right? Did I capture that?
Yeah, I think there's it's all very muddy. When you pivot into technology, one is why do you pivot into technology and what type of role do you want to play, which I had to figure out. So, you have the coding boot camp. And for me, I felt like product was a very transferable skills to the kind of project management I was doing at the bank. But also, and the reason I want to work in technology is because I think it's a pretty much a continuation of human evolution, and that it's a combination of people and technology that leads us to new outcomes or more creative outcomes. And So that's one bit, but the other bit is what's great about tech in particular is it kind of touches every industry. So the question that I typically ask my people that are going through my community or my course around pivoting career is like, what difference do you want to see in the world, or what difference you want to make?
Okay. So what are typical answers you get?
People usually get a little stuck on it.
I was going to say, that's a big question.
But typically, I think we should be thinking about it. But typically, I think maybe 3 topics. One is something around equality or inclusiveness, or helping underprivileged people, or advance is a common one. One is kind of environmental.
Okay.
Like trying to make a difference around climate, and I think the other one is really around building great teams or leadership. When I hear those 3 answers, it's always buckets down to environmental, something about the equal opportunity for different people in the world, and around like leadership and teamwork.
That's interesting.
A lot of them are combinations of the few.
So the equality, the environment, teams, and leading people. See, mine is be of service for others, adding value. Right. That's the purpose I have, in terms of, because it helped me. That was a bit of a mind shift for me, I'd say 5, maybe 10 years ago now, where it was all about me, but in the nicest possible way. It was because I was measuring myself based on salary. That's what I mean, all about me, as in I was measuring, okay, I'm earning this, therefore I must be, how do I get that number up? Whereas what I've found now is it's how do I help others? How do I add value? How do I work through? And then everything else follows, lifestyle, monetary rewards, everything else. But it's that shift was a big eye opener for me. Yeah, probably about 10 years ago.
Totally. I used to work for a gentleman, managing director at the investment bank, and I remember being like, this person, fine person, good person, but could not. The only metric that mattered to that person around success was money. It's the dollars in the bank account, which I think, success or prestige or power, these are all things that typical external constructs push on us, like the extrinsic motivation. But the intrinsic motivation of having a fulfilling and meaningful life is really what will carry us through. There's a very good book called Man's Search for Meaning. I'm not sure.
Yes.
If you've read it.
Yeah, Viktor Frankl.
Yeah. So if anyone's listening to this, I highly recommend it. It's a short read. And he's a psychologist.
I took 3 runs at it because it's quite hard going. It's worth it, but it's quite hard going.
And I probably didn't capture like everything from the book, but the biggest thing I captured is, he's the psychologist in Auschwitz, and he's dissecting the different psychological impacts of being there. But who has the will to survive, and who doesn't? And it's usually this unfinished business, be it a family member that they want to find, or a piece of work. There's this reason to be. And, when you talk about, business and leadership, it's that being that's so important, that makes us successful leaders and successful organizations, more than just the doing.
Yeah.
And coming back to purpose allows us to think about, who am I? Who do I need to be today? Who do I want to be today? And these are the questions we don't ask ourselves.
Yeah. It's interesting because the one of the stories related similar to that Man's Search for Meaning is when they ask prisoners of war questions coming into the prisoner of war camps and decide which of the levels of security they put them in. So they're asking them what their favorite sports team is, what car do they really want to drive, what are they going to do when they get back home. And for those who say, I don't know, or I don't really care too much, they put them in the low security prisons because they know they're not really going to survive or challenge the authority. But the ones with, this is my team, I'm passionate about this, and to your point, when I get out, I'm going to go build a house or get my career in order or look after my family, they're in the high security prisons because they have that purpose, that drive. And in the work environment, that's why I find my switch to adding value and being of service does help me get out of bed in the morning when I'm tired and I've had long days or long weeks. It's what am I doing that helps other people? And that drives me forward. I do think money is a good measure for some people. It's a measure of result, but it shouldn't drive you.
Right. I didn't know that about the POWs, so that's really interesting.
Yeah, I just heard that the other day actually as well. Because again, it's when you start looking for those things, it's that purpose really drives how people are in adverse circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, bring this back bring this back to entrepreneurship and Calgary and technology as well. I know you do a lot of work in scaling businesses or helping businesses scale, and a lot of your topics around products versus service. So I'd just like to unpack that a bit more and help the audience understand your thoughts on scaling and products and services.
Well, as a finance person, or in the back is the difference between how evaluation is looked at for a service business versus a product business is striking. And I think that was really important when I was working at the first startup of it, because what often can get confused. So your product is something that can be productized, you sell it over and over again, it's quite scalable, right? You don't need a lot of, if you were to sell 10x more, you don't need that many more bodies to do so, right? So technology, especially software as a service, is a great product because it's very scalable. Whereas a service, you're typically providing some sort of human labor service, maybe be it knowledge worker. But if you 10x your workforce, or your revenue, you probably need to, maybe it's not 10x, but you got to like 5 or 6x. So like, if you have a cleaning business, if you take on 5 times more clients, you're going to need some cleaners in it. Versus if you're selling vacuum cleaners, you can just, add another shipping line, and there's different scaling there. What happens, I think, especially in technology organizations, is you can get very confused very quick of like, what is a product versus what is a service?
Yeah, especially this cloud SaaS environment.
Right. And you might be thinking that you actually are a true software business, which, a true SaaS business that is productized, that product revenue, the recurring subscription revenue can be anywhere from 10 to 15 times if you're a growing organization. Whereas if you're a true consulting business, 1 to 2 times revenue is a valuation that can be appropriate. It changes. It counts how dependent you are on those consultants, what relationships they have. So like management consulting would be your lowest, because those person usually has the right relationships and IP. And if they leave your organization, they bring it all with them. So that revenue isn't as stable.
But then it's much easier to start a service business because you don't need anything. You know what I mean? Just providing you and service. Whereas product, there's typically an investment, the R&D to build it out. So how do you balance that with people coming into the workforce or companies to say, how do they choose between service and product?
Well, I think ultimately you're 100% right between the risk profiles, and I think all businesses have some component around it. But knowing the difference in margins, like you can just knowing that the cost of running that service business is you need a significant revenue on that labor, and you're not going to get rewarded. But a lot of businesses do start around services, and that's why you're right around product businesses. Product businesses usually have a big upfront investment where they need to raise venture capital because they have this insight, and they're cash flow negative for quite some time. In some cases, like Uber just moved into like profitability in the last couple of years, is my understanding. So you're like consistently adding revenue in order to grow the business. Ultimately, like if you think of valuation, pretty much every industry comes down to 2 main drivers. One is stability of cash flow, and one is growth.
Okay, so let's capture that. So these are the drivers of a successful business: stability of cash flow,
drivers of valuation.
So,
when we talk about valuation, when we're talking about multiples, usually there's all these different things that people talk about with comparables, but you can boil it down to these 2 drivers, and it's stability of cash flow. So, i.e., what's the chance of an external event happening or something happening, and you're going to see sudden changes in cash flow. So like an oil and gas company, it's upstream, has very low multiples compared to a midstream organization, because the midstream organization has contracts that are on it. So like a midstream organization, maybe 15 times EBITDA, different than technology on revenue. whereas an oil and gas company is like 2-3 times cash flow, like an upstream company. And that has to do with stability. The other big piece is growth, which is really important for technology organizations. And, technology organizations are all about recurring subscription revenue. So enterprise companies will have a lot lower churn once you put the data into your product. There's a lot of different people that are using the product. There's a lot of switching costs. Churn is quite low versus having a business that is serving small, medium businesses. So the scalability is higher. But then there's that big growth piece of like how quickly you can grow and how much, what's the infrastructure that you need to grow. So ultimately, when you're thinking about your multiples and you're thinking about how you compare to your business, it's like, is my cash flow more sticky? And am I growing faster or less? And then that's the adjustment on the multiple.
It's interesting because I was talking to Craig Elias in a previous podcast around growth of companies, and some of the business owners I meet and work with are scared of growth because they don't have the people to support the growth. So they go through lots of peaks and troughs. They do really well, and then but not do any sales or marketing, and then suddenly hit a dip. All right, ramp up sales and marketing, then get a massive growth spurt, and then back off. And I said, how do you balance that out, Craig? What do you do? And he said, always be hiring, always be open to new people. So then even if you don't necessarily hire them, you have people you can tap on the shoulder. So you're always sales and marketing, always. You just keep going, but you can get people to help build that out. To the point, this is a service-based organization. This is around consulting services. This isn't product. So just be curious what your thoughts were around, if I'm a product company, how do I start that growth? How do I maintain growth? What are the decision points to help me grow?
Yeah. Ultimately, as a technology organization, you have pre-product market fit and then you have post-product market fit. Pre-product. So product market fit. Product market fits means selling the exact same thing to the exact same person over and over again. If you're tweaking your messaging or you're tweaking the offering, that is not product market fit. It's not scalable. Okay. So a pre-product market fit company is pre-seed or seed. And typically, you're spending more time in R&D mode as well as discovery mode with some sales and marketing activities to discover where your market is, how your brand fits, how there's adoption of your product. When you go post product market fit, Series A, Series B, Series C, you're adding a lot more processes into your business. But that R&D focus that's very heavy in the pre-seed seats. When I talk about R&D, I'm talking about like developers, designers, engineers, people building product, and then usually like the founders going out, or the founders with a little sales team. The budget completely kind of twists over to sales and marketing. I'm not saying that you don't do any of it at the beginning, but you do have more of a sales and marketing push. Because I like to do the analogy, because we're in Calgary, about oil and gas companies. A small oil and gas company that's a junior company, their job is to go find an oil play, drill it enough, delineate it, and then the large producer or the big company can come in, or you can put capital into it because they know exactly how much oil they can get when they drill each well.
Right.
Very similar to a startup that is trying to figure out product market fit. But once they have it, they're like, if we put this much capital into the business, we know our lifetime value of our customer, and we know our customer acquisition costs. And because of that, we know how much we should grow with this much capital.
Right.
Again, but there's always a talent shortage of people. So I think that's both, but hopefully you don't have that kind of peaks and troughs. You're just continuously growing. But we know that doesn't happen for all organizations, but continue to be iterative and customer led. And, for me, what I think, having a really strong community strategy, being community led, bringing people onto the journey, focusing around your purpose and rallying them around what you're doing them, and bringing both your customers, your company, or customers, employees, and investors together around what you're actually trying to do is help someone grow or self-actualize based on the mission of your organization is what you're really trying to do. So enhancing that through a community allows you to find talent and, promoting it. I think if you have strong presence in your community, particularly through social channels, you can say, hey, we're looking for this type of person,
Mm.
and it
Yes.
generates demand versus going the traditional like recruiters and sales route.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I mean, worked in consulting many years now. I know my first call of when I need someone is my network reaching out to me, or, hey, do you know of this? Do you know of anyone who could fit these skills? And reached out to yourself just recently for a data analyst architect that I needed as well. So it's before you get to recruiters, because you're into the Wild West there. You might hit gold for sure, but it takes a bit of extra effort. Whereas when you're reaching out to people, you're getting people that you can vouch for as well. And sometimes they may not fit classically in terms of what you're looking for, but because you've worked with them, know them, then you can say, actually, John, this guy could be a good fit. You should talk to them. So I really like that community effect of helping hiring people and bringing that together as well.
I think, posting on, particularly for me on LinkedIn, is, it's really changed my impact to A, grow the initiatives that I'm doing, and B, find people. For example, I have this course that I'm doing in April. I've done another course. I will do 3 LinkedIn posts probably on this course, and I will be full. And, I'm hiring someone to help me with some marketing, and I did 1 post,
right,
and I got 10 really great leads.
Nice.
And all I had to do was just post once. And I think the consistency of posting what you're thinking and what you're doing, attracts. Yeah, it's actually a great writing habit. And B, those that are interested in what you're doing will follow you and engage with you. So when you have an ask, you can just instead of it's like marketing versus sales. Instead of me going out and asking a bunch of people of things, I kind of put it out there and see what the world comes back with.
Right. Yeah. I do want to loop back onto what you said around the growth and market fit, and then understanding what your customers want and getting that community input. And is that coming down? In my experience, that's coming down to getting feedback, surveys, customer journeys, understanding how your product can help someone, and really getting that learning for whatever product service you're selling. So what's your experience around getting that feedback and confirming the market fit?
Yeah. The biggest one, there's what we call, so typically, if you think about technology being built, there's 2 important phases. There is discovery and there's development. And typically what a founder does is they have I have an idea, maybe not typically, but a lot of times I've seen this happen. I have an idea, I need someone to develop it. They tell them what you need to develop. They develop the thing, and then they go do their discovery, which is the exact opposite of what you want to be doing, right? So discovery is all about, understanding that if you're going to deliver value before you put it into an engineer's hand. So there's 2 stages of discovery in my mind. There's multiple within it. One is you're actually trying to discover the problem. So
yes,
you're not talking about your solution, particularly, if you're trying to build a technology product. You're trying to understand the person's problems, their days, if this is a top priority problem. So you're going out talking to people and doing these discovery interviews and asking them questions about, just their life. And then you're okay, did they mention my problem as the main problem? Or was it something kind of in the background? Were they a good fit? And that's one stage, and it often gets overlooked. And then you have when you start thinking about validation of a solution.
Right.
So you're okay, we've discovered there is this problem, but can what we build solve that problem? And that's some sort of low fidelity mock-up or solution to try to prove if someone's willing to pay for it before you put it. So there's mock-ups and testing and different things you can do around validation, but ultimately the ultimate piece of validation is someone willing to pay. But you're trying to figure out if they will pay you without putting a bunch of code. And then you want to iterate. The other thing I see founders starting to build technology products, and what they think is minimum viable product is not minimum viable.
Right. Yes, I know. I hear you. Yeah. I know.
And I've heard this saying from a couple of founders, minimum desirable product, and I hate it. I'm no, it's not desirable at the beginning. It's kind of close, but you just you got to put it out there. If someone's willing, if you're getting traction on your really undesirable product, then that's probably a good thing. This other thing I say to founders is when you build technology, what they think is, founders think today is the slowest we'll ever build our technology, and we're just going to go faster from here on out. And I think it's the exact opposite.
Oh, totally. Completely opposite. Yes.
Because code is very expensive to change and maintain.
Yeah. And plus less people involved. You've got more freedom at the beginning.
Totally. So I'm like, be very, very, very wary. And pretty much every, I have I've invested in about 10 technology startups. And when I say I mean me and my fiance as a collective. Sorry, where was it?
Is it MVP? I want to define MVP as well, because I hear you in terms of that definition, because I was working with an engineering firm as well, and the funding was coming from different groups, and the definition of MVP, minimum viable product, was different depending on who you spoke to. So minimum to the engineers was, bare minimum, we just want to get it out the door. Viable was how well could it do, and the finance team was saying from a viability point of view, it had to meet these financial thresholds, which were lower than what the engineering folks were looking at. And then the product from the marketing folks, they were saying, hey, it needs to do everything because we need to get it out of the market. So from a product point of view, their view, each group's view of an MVP was very, very different. And I was really helping coach them through, we need to get alignment on this, folks, because you're all charging off doing this MVP perceptions in the wrong way. And it's not going to align at the end.
Yeah, for me, ultimately, product should actually be the person. Maybe this is just an opinion. Product should actually be the one that's pushing the organization to go the barest.
That's the ideal, yes.
Because product's ultimately responsible for the product roadmap. What's my definition is, can it deliver the microcosm of value that you're trying to deliver?
And love it. Value to solve that problem. Yeah. And to solve the problem.
Yes. So, I think it was so funny when I first joined my first technology organization. We did this like list of priorities, and I was working with the founder of the company, and we had like this must, should, would, could like system, and then we were ranking them. And essentially, I was like, I have a 5-point system, and he'd be like 5, 5, 5, and like he's like, well, it's a 4.9 for this, and then eventually you get to stack ranking, which is where everyone should start. We should have got there right away. No two things are equal. You stack rank them, because it's much easier to just compare two things and be like, that one's more important than the other, versus being like, is this important or not? But what the interesting part is, some of these things that he was talking about, he's like, that's a 4.9. Like, don't need it today, but we're going to need it tomorrow. Like within a month or two. I worked on that product for 2 years and we never got to it. The 4.9s.
Right. Wow. No way. That's unbelievable.
Right? So if I can give a stack ranking, and I think for businesses generally, like, as you become bigger, you have different resources and needs, and it becomes more complex. But if you're a small organization, it's like, okay, this quarter, what is like the 1, 2, 3 things we got to get done?
And to your point, that market fit, customer feedback, because I remember working in financial services back in the UK years and years ago, one of my first jobs out of university, and we were doing a Salesforce technology project where we're issuing insurance within a day. That was our goal. Massive technology overhaul, new laptops for all these sales agents. And when we launched, we got better results, but it was nowhere near what we expected. And we talked to the sales agents and said, hey, what's going on? You can issue insurance within a day, down from about 15, 20 days or a month sometimes. And they said, it's the customers want a box of chocolates and a bunch of flowers. And I was like, what are you talking about? Is that because the sales agents, when they issue the policy, were saying, not only will you get a policy, but you'll also get a box of chocolates and a bunch of flowers. So because we didn't have that in the process, the sales agents weren't selling as much. And as soon as we said, oh yeah, you can have an allowance for that, sales went through the roof. So not only were they getting faster insurance, the customers were getting a box of chocolates and a bunch of flowers, and everyone was happy. But it took us, that feedback was absolutely critical to find that out.
Yeah, totally. And that's why getting your product in front of customers' hands, like ideally, this is where I go back to like community led. Like ultimately, an organization usually starts around a mission and a purpose, and hopefully that's clear at the beginning.
Right, goals, mission, purpose, absolutely.
And if that's the case, you can continuously be projecting as a person and as an organization the impact that you're trying to make, and people will hopefully gravitate towards that.
Yeah.
And now as you're doing that, that's going to garner interest in the work that you are doing, versus moving away into a corner and building a product and then being like, oh, we're ready for the market. And it's kind of like a cold start, right?
Yes. Which is why I love where we started with this, around when you're asking your students around the why, what are they doing around that equality environment, that teams, that leadership. It comes back to that purpose, adding that value.
It's really interesting. I tell my pivoters, and this is the first time I've ever thought of it this way, the main 3 things that you need to do in order to successfully pivot is the self-discovery, the networking, and the purpose or projects. And I don't think that's any different for
so this is golden. List those 3 again.
Self-discovery, networking, and projects.
So self-discovery in terms of learning your strengths, weaknesses. The networking is community, and what was the third one? Projects.
I.e. show, building what you wanted, some sort of demonstration of doing the work that you want to do.
Yeah, execution. It's so easy to think and plan and not get on with it, in my experience as well. You can overthink it.
Yeah, and that's like, for a pivoter, is like going into the course treadmill, I call it.
Oh, okay,
Take a course versus
just
build. And I think that it's similar for a technology startup. It's like be an accelerator, go an accelerator versus put the product into market.
So I love that as well, because self is understanding your strengths and weaknesses and pulling, either developing your skills because you want to go in that direction. But if you're really not good at that, then find someone else, which I like around the network, because then you're leveraging the who, not how. So it's not about how I do this, it's who can help me do this, which is where your network comes in. And then execution, just get on and do it, because if you don't know if it's right or wrong, just start, because by starting and get on with it, you'll find out if it's right or wrong, but you won't think about it being right or wrong. You have to get on and execute.
Totally.
Yeah, love it. So this is really good. So much to unpack here, Zach, and we could go on for a long time, but I want to make sure we wrap up on an action. Always like to ask, what's the one thing you'd like the audience to take away from this? Because we've covered lots around making sure you have purpose, the meaning, the drivers of value around stability of cash flow and growth, the community-led through purpose, the pre-product market fit, post-product market fit, and then the MDP and MVP, minimal desirable versus minimal viable. So what's the one thing you'd want to leave our audience with?
Oh, I think for me, it's be very clear on, what your mission and purpose is, and rally those around you, find your supporters, and build that community around it, right? Let people know.
Yes.
This is the difference you're trying to make. And if you're clear on the difference you want to make, you may not figure out exactly how you're going to do that on day one, but you'll eventually figure it out as if you keep projecting that. So, just stay true to your mission.
Yeah. A great, love that. The great book by Austin Kleon is Show Your Work. We have this inherent belief that we need to hide away, come up with something amazing, and then show it to the world. But his book is very much, to your point around earlier, around iteration and execution projects, just get it out there, show people, get feedback. Don't be scared of anything, because feedback makes you stronger, gives you ideas, helps you work it through, and ultimately works towards that market fit. So yeah, love it.
Yeah, the like vulnerabilities in right now, openness maybe it was always in. So people love to see people share their struggle.
Yes.
People are attracted to that more so than showing that you have a perfect thing. It's more like, I've struggled and I'm working towards this thing. I think actually opens more doors.
Yes. Yeah, true. Just being honest and just saying it's not perfect, but love feedback. It's how do I make this better? Yeah, love it.
Well, thanks for the time.
Yeah, it's really appreciate your team, and thanks again, Zach, for spending your time here. I know the audience is going to get a real value out of this, and I can't wait to publish this. But yeah, thanks for your time, and we'll catch you soon.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for the conversation.
All right, cheers, Zach. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to the Let's Talk About It podcast, brought to you by WeDeliverYourVision.com. the go-to place for delivering your vision and getting traction fast.